Giacomo Casanova was more than just the son of actors. He was a brilliant yet vulnerable young man who quickly learned the harsh price of independence, forced to forge his own path in a world where lineage yielded to connections and virtue to cunning. He had no inheritance, no noble patrons by birth, but his keen intellect and phenomenal charm became his most potent weapons. With these, he orchestrated audacious financial schemes, served as a skilled spy and subtle diplomat, and, of course, seduced. Yet every action, every romance, every intrigue pursued one unwavering goal: to gain complete control over his own destiny and wield boundless power over circumstances. He became more than a mere Don Juan, whose name became synonymous with frivolous adventures. He was the architect of his own fate, a masterful manipulator whose life unfolded like a grand performance, with himself as its perpetual director, scriptwriter, and leading star. His journey was a series of dizzying ascents and crushing falls, from the splendor of the most luxurious Parisian salons and St. Petersburg palaces to the dark, suffocating confines of Venice's Piombi prison. But even where others broke, Casanova found the strength not only to survive, but to turn defeat into triumph, crafting a legend around himself that endured for centuries and generations. This legend, however, was merely an artfully constructed facade, meticulously polished by Casanova himself in his famous memoirs. Behind the myth of the carefree heartbreaker, the eternal pleasure-seeker, lay a calculating strategist, a cynical player for whom any human weakness, be it vanity, greed, or even genuine affection, was just another tool in his ruthless struggle for prominence. He was not a prisoner of his passions. On the contrary, he was their puppeteer, masterfully controlling them both within himself and in others. And it is precisely in this that his true, unsettling, and still underestimated greatness lies. But before this masterful puppeteer gained command of the world, he himself was shaped by the harsh lessons of early childhood, where every step was a struggle, and every trial formed the foundation of his unorthodox brilliance. Born in Venice in 1725, Giacomo was the second of 6 children to actors whose nomadic life meant constant absence. His childhood was spent in the home of his grandmother, Marzia Ferrucci, under her watchful, though often superstitious, care. While other children enjoyed parental affection, Giacomo grew up feeling abandoned, forced to find support within himself and in his fantasies. From an early age, he was plagued by illnesses, especially debilitating nosebleeds that nearly cost him his life. It was then, at the age of 8, that his desperate grandmother took him to a mysterious witch known as the Old Sorceress. The ritual, which she claimed expelled demons from the boy's body, left an indelible mark on Giacomo. He came to believe in his own exceptionalism, in his ability to influence unseen forces, and, far more importantly, in the power of deception and manipulation if they led to the desired outcome. This was the first, but certainly not the last, time reality was masterfully distorted for personal gain. Sent to Padua under the care of Abbot Gozzi, Giacomo proved to be a prodigy. He effortlessly mastered Latin, Greek, philosophy, mathematics, and chemistry, demonstrating a phenomenal memory and sharp intellect. Yet, alongside his thirst for knowledge, an insatiable passion for life and forbidden pleasures raged within him. By 12, he had his first intimate experiences, and by 15, his reputation was hopelessly tarnished by gambling debts and scandalous affairs. It was then, at 16, that his first point of no return occurred: expulsion from the seminary for indecent behavior. This incident, a public disgrace, completely shattered any illusions of leading a respectable life. Only one path remained open to Giacomo, that of an adventurer, for whom societal rules were mere obstacles to be circumvented, and morality a tool to achieve his goals. He understood that his only inheritance was his intellect, his charm, and his absolute fearlessness in the face of any consequences. The 18th century, which embraced Giacomo Casanova after his ignominious expulsion from the seminary, was an era of astonishing contrasts, a time when old orders were crumbling and new ones had yet to solidify. Europe became a vast chessboard where kings and emperors, driven less by ideals than by a pragmatic thirst for power, constantly redrew borders and forged peculiar alliances. Dynastic conflicts such as the War of the Austrian Succession or the 7 Years' War shook the continent, compelling states to seek not only military might but also cunning diplomats, skilled spies, and even influential intermediaries capable of operating outside official channels. Old empires like the Venetian Republic, once a mighty mistress of the seas, were now slowly fading, transforming into ghosts of their former grandeur, yet maintaining an appearance of luxury and debauchery, as if attempting to drown out the whispers of inevitable decline with a death dance. Against this backdrop, a new economy flourished, based on finance and speculation rather than solely on land and trade. Stock exchanges emerged, joint stock companies thrived, bill circulation blossomed, and paper became more powerful than gold. This was a time when fortunes could be made overnight through risky ventures and collapse the next, opening boundless opportunities for those who understood the mechanisms of deception and could masterfully play on human greed and fear. Slowly but surely, the old feudal world, where a person's place was determined by birth, gave way to a society where mental agility, networking skills, and even outright fraud could elevate an individual to unprecedented heights. The social atmosphere was no less paradoxical. The age of Enlightenment proclaimed the triumph of reason and science, yet superstition and mysticism remained an integral part of daily life, permeating all strata of society, from peasants to high-ranking aristocrats. Royal palaces and noble salons were centers not only of political intrigue, but also of intellectual discussions, where the ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau coexisted with belief in alchemy, spiritualism, and secret societies. People craved spectacles, entertainment, new sensations, and captivating stories. They were willing to pay for them, whether it was opera performances, card games for exorbitant sums, or encounters with mysterious individuals promising immense wealth or the revelation of great secrets. In this world, where the lines between truth and fiction, honesty and deceit were blurred, where old values lost meaning and new ones had yet to take root, a talented adventurer with a keen mind and absolute fearlessness found fertile ground to flourish. This was a century that not only tolerated individuals like Casanova, but actively produced them, creating ideal conditions for those who could masterfully manipulate the hopes and fears of others, transforming their own lives into a series of thrilling, albeit dangerous, performances. Kicked out of the seminary at 16, Giacomo Casanova returned to Venice penniless and without prospects. He was a nobody in a city where bloodline and connections meant everything. But if society denied him a legitimate path, he was ready to carve his own, using the only assets he possessed, a sharp mind, audacious charm, and a remarkable ability to persuade. It was then, on the brink of despair, that he pulled off his first truly significant trick, one that not only saved him from destitution, but also opened doors to high society, laying the foundation for his future, far more ambitious adventures. In 1746, a 21-year-old Casanova, while in Venice, fortuitously encountered the elderly senator Giovanni Bragadin. The senator, known for his eccentricity and belief in mysticism, was on the verge of death, and the city's best doctors were helpless. Casanova, quickly assessing the situation and Bragadin's character, saw in this not just an opportunity, but a genuine chance to change his fate. He offered his services to the senator, claiming to possess secret knowledge capable of saving him. For 3 days, while doctors threw up their hands, Casanova performed pseudo-Kabbalistic rituals over the dying old man, uttering incantations, administering miraculous elixirs, and convincing him that his salvation depended solely on following his instructions. By some miracle, or more likely, due to the placebo effect and the natural course of the illness, the senator began to recover. For Bragadin, this was not just a cure, but divine intervention. For Casanova, it was a triumph of sophisticated deception. The senator, convinced of his savior's mystical abilities, not only generously rewarded Giacomo, but also took him into his home as a son, providing him with a comfortable existence, access to Venice's most influential circles, and a reputation as a man capable of the incredible. This story, which quickly spread throughout the city, became the first, but far from the last, chapter in the myth of Casanova as a kind of magician or seer capable of commanding unseen forces. He didn't just deceive one person, he set a precedent, proving that belief in miracles could be far more potent than any reality. The reputation as a miracle worker earned through Bragadin became an invaluable asset for Casanova. Wherever he went, from Rome to Paris, he was met as a man capable of unraveling the mysteries of existence, predicting the future, and even attracting good fortune. He masterfully played this role, always maintaining a mysterious demeanor, hinting at his special connections to the otherworldly, but never revealing all his cards. This allowed him to penetrate the most exclusive salons, meet the most influential figures, and, most importantly, find those willing to pay for his magical services. He didn't sell specific spells, he sold hope, the illusion of control over destiny, and sometimes even very real financial gains that were purportedly the result of his mystical insights. It was this aura of mystery and omnipotence that became the key to his subsequent, even grander financial ventures. When Casanova arrived in Paris in 1757, he was already known as a man with unusual connections and astonishing luck. France, exhausted by the 7 Years' War, was desperately in need of funds. Giacomo, always attuned to market conditions, proposed to the foreign minister, Abbé de Bernis, a brilliant solution, as he described it, the establishment of a state lottery. He convinced Bernis that, by using his deep mathematical knowledge and Kabbalistic calculations, he could devise a system that would generate enormous revenues for the treasury. Of course, he possessed no special mathematical or mystical knowledge, only a keen understanding of mass psychology and their eternal craving for easy money. With Bernis's approval, Casanova set to work. He not only devised the lottery's rules, but also actively participated in its promotion, creating an aura of exclusivity and incredible opportunity around it. Like a seasoned marketer, he played on human greed and hope, promising immense riches to those who dared to risk. The lottery, launched under state patronage, instantly became incredibly popular. People from all over France spent their last pennies, hoping for a miracle. And a miracle indeed occurred, but not for the players, it was for the treasury, and, of course, for Casanova himself. He received not only a substantial reward for his services, but also a share of the profits, allowing him to live lavishly, host extravagant receptions, and forge new, even more lucrative acquaintances. This was more than just a financial operation. It was a masterful manipulation on a national scale, where belief in luck and mystical patronage were used to replenish the state treasury and personally enrich an adventurer who proved that in the 18th century, faith in magic and promises of easy money were far more powerful than any common sense. Time and again he confirmed his principle: reality was merely clay from which any advantage could be molded. The lottery's success in Paris was more than just a profitable venture. It served as a vivid demonstration of Casanova's influence, showcasing his unique toolkit, a collection of psychological tricks and manipulation techniques he had honed since youth. At the core of his method was an infallible understanding of human nature, its vulnerabilities, and its inherent desires. He knew that people yearned for miracles, easy money, and validation of their own exceptionalism. And he was ready to give them all of this, skillfully packaging deception in a veneer of plausibility. His charm was not merely a pleasant attribute, it became a weapon capable of piercing the armor of skepticism. Casanova possessed the gift of speaking to everyone in their own language, to a minister about state interests, to an aristocrat about secret knowledge, to a commoner about unattainable dreams. He knew not just how to listen, but to truly hear, identifying the hidden motives and fears of his interlocutor, then masterfully using them for his own ends. His gaze, voice, gestures, everything contributed to creating the image of a trustworthy person, even when common sense screamed otherwise. The lottery example is just one of many. Giacomo masterfully played on the most primitive yet powerful human emotion, greed. He didn't promise hard work and slow growth, he offered instantaneous, incredible enrichment. And he did so with such enthusiasm and belief in success that he infected those around him. People saw him not just as a businessman, but as a prophet of fortune who himself attracted wealth. This belief, bolstered by his meticulously constructed reputation as a miracle worker, was far more effective than any advertising. He did not act alone. Casanova was a master at creating the necessary ambiance and attracting the right experts. In the case of Senator Bragadin, it was an aura of mysticism and secrecy. With the lottery, it was a reference to deep mathematical knowledge and the minister's patronage. He knew how to leverage the authority of others, even if that authority was merely a facade. Generating buzz was his forte, whether it was rumors of his magical abilities or promises of fabulous winnings. He skillfully stoked interest, transforming an ordinary event into a grand spectacle that captivated the entire capital. But perhaps Casanova's most outstanding quality was his phenomenal adaptability. He did not adhere to a single role or strategy. He was a chameleon, changing his guise depending on circumstances and needs. In Venice, he was a mystic. In Paris, a financier. In other cities, a spy, a diplomat, even an alchemist. He instantly read the atmosphere, discerning what was valued in a given society or situation, knowledge, connections, money, or even belief in the supernatural, and immediately transformed himself, offering himself as the ideal solution. This capacity for instant, almost instinctive reinvention allowed him to survive and thrive in the most unpredictable conditions, turning every defeat into a new beginning and every setback into a lesson in the art of survival. His self-belief, cultivated since childhood, was unshakable. He didn't just play a role, he embodied it in every specific moment, dissolving into the persona he himself created. For him, life was a theater, and he was its greatest actor, capable of making anyone believe any fabrication if it served his ultimate goal, gaining freedom and power over his own destiny. This was not pure cynical hypocrisy. It was a deeply ingrained principle of existence, where the main thing was not what you were, but what you could convince others you were. The very qualities that propelled Giacomo Casanova to the heights of success, his independence, indomitable will to control circumstances, and audacity aiguë, simultaneously made him a target for those who tolerated no uncontrollable geniuses. The Venetian Republic, once mighty but now plagued by internal contradictions and fear of any deviation from established norms, closely monitored his every move. The main antagonist in this struggle for freedom turned out not to be an individual, but an entire system, the Inquisition, whose methods were as mysterious and ruthless as Casanova himself was masterful in his intrigues. On July 26, 1755, when Casanova seemed to have reached the peak of his Venetian influence, enjoying luxury and the patronage of Senator Bragadin, his world collapsed. Early in the morning, without warning, agents of the Inquisition burst into his home. The accusations were vague but deadly. Dangerous ideas, witchcraft, Freemasonry, dissolute lifestyle. Essentially, he was indicted for who he was, a man who didn't fit within boundaries, too brilliant, too successful, too free. Giacomo was thrown into the Piombi, the famous lead prison, located directly under the roof of the Doge's palace. In summer, it was unbearably hot. In winter, piercingly cold. The air was stale, dampness permeated to the bone, and the only source of light came from tiny barred windows overlooking dusty attics. For a man who had strived for complete freedom and control his entire life, this was not merely imprisonment, but a complete annihilation of his principles. He found himself in a situation where his intellect, charm, and cunning seemed powerless. His patrons, including the old senator, were frightened and either could not or would not intervene. But even in this hell, amidst despair and hopelessness, Casanova did not break. He didn't just survive, he planned. Every day, using the only tools available to him, his sharp mind, patience, and incredible will, he methodically devised an escape plan. He managed to find a hidden iron bar, which he used to begin punching a hole in the ceiling of his cell. This was a task requiring inhuman endurance and ingenuity, masking the noise, hiding the dislodged pieces of wood, and avoiding the attention of the guards. On the night of November 1st, 1756, as all Venice celebrated All Saints' Day, Giacomo Casanova accomplished what was deemed impossible. Through the hole he had made, he climbed into the attic, then traversed the roof of the Doge's palace, under the cover of darkness and fog, reaching an adjacent building. His path was fraught with dangers, slippery tiles, the threat of falling, the risk of detection. But he moved with the determination of a man for whom freedom was more precious than life. Deceiving the last guard, he managed to reach St. Mark's Square and, without attracting attention, vanished into the fog, leaving behind not only the hateful prison but also Venice itself, which had treated him so cruelly. This audacious escape, which soon became the talk of all Europe, was not merely Casanova's personal triumph. It became an integral part of his legend, proof of his exceptionalism and invulnerability. He demonstrated that he could outwit not only individuals, but the state machine itself. It was the ultimate act of self-liberation, cementing his reputation forever as a man capable of any miracle. It was after this triumph, with the world at his feet and his name synonymous with incredible adventures, that Giacomo Casanova set off for Paris, where his next grand spectacle awaited, the state lottery, which we have already discussed. He was not just a fugitive, but a living embodiment of the idea that one's destiny could not only be controlled, but forged independently, even wrested from the strongest